Bryn Honda, Fw yn Yusuf, mae'n blessed bod yma, dwi'n dysgu Gymraeg. And that's as far as I can go with confidence in this setting. And so forgive me for not being able to say more at this stage. And it's something that I hope to improve as I go forward. So it's a pleasure to welcome you all here today. And I hope you get a lot out of this session. I've got some amazing colleagues with us today as well who are going to be talking about their journeys really on implementing the Welsh strategy. But I'm just going to spend just a couple of moments just to reflect on what that is. So it just sets the scene a little bit for us. And then within the panel discussion, then hopefully this will bring out some issues, and then we could move to potentially, if there's time, a bit of a Q&A at the end. So the Gymraeg 2050 strategy essentially looks at identifying the need to develop post-compulsory education, which increases continuity rates and supports everyone to develop Welsh language skills for social spaces, but also the workplace. And that's directly from the strategy itself. So there's a real emphasis on wanting this to be in the workplace, so that functional Welsh, but also in social settings as well. So it's a living, breathing culture of Welsh language within our settings. Coleg Cymru have committed to support the ambition of 1 million Welsh speakers. And this is important so that we're meeting learner needs, but also the wider community needs and uplifting ourselves as a nation. And Coleg Cymraeg, and I feel, creates and promotes training and study opportunities in Welsh language. And it does this in collaboration, working with further education partners, apprenticeships and employers, and looking to bring together courses that allow us to upskill within these sectors. So this Welsh language, it belongs to all of us. As an English migrant into Wales, I'm proud that we have to be learning the language, and I'm proud that we're taking steps to really hone in on our identity. So that's something that I think is really important, that we're celebrating our identity as Welsh people. And all of us in our institutions have a responsibility for promoting Welsh language, for developing the skills in Welsh. And so that's why I'm really pleased to welcome our panel, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and their role in relation to Welsh skills. So I'll start off with Lucy, who is from Pembrokeshire College. So over to you, Lucy.
Diolch. I'm Lucy Bracken. I'm the Curriculum Area Manager for Work-Based Learning here at Pembrokeshire College. I mainly cover apprenticeships in health and social care. My career path, I initially joined the armed forces, and following having my children, I trained as an early years assessor in Northern Ireland. I then followed by coming to Pembrokeshire College as an assessor, and I secured my current post as Curriculum Area Manager in 2014. And my role, I'm responsible for implementing the Welsh strategy into our work-based curriculum.
Thank you very much, Lucy. And that's a varied career journey there. Really good to have those experiences, and I'm sure that they're going to hold you in good stead for bringing together this strategy. Over next to Rhian.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rhian Pardo. I'm the Learning Area Manager for Health and Care at Gower College. I've worked for the college for 18 years, and I started my long journey as an MVQ assessor, which in health and social care at the time. I progressed into lecturing health and social care and childcare, and then I was promoted as an ALAM to begin with, assistant, and now the LAM in 2017. For me, it is around promoting Gymraeg 2050, and I think the important factor for me is, I'm going to give you a bit of an example as to why. I had a Welsh medium education, so I went to Pontypridd, and then I went to Ysgol Gyfyn the first year, and then there wasn't a sixth form in Goer, so it meant going to Yslafera or going to a local college. So I picked my local college, and then it wasn't until I did my postgraduate did any form of Welsh happen for me. So that, for me, damaged my confidence, hence why I'm speaking to you in English, although I could do it in Welsh. So it damaged my confidence, because you never lose the skill of Welsh. I've never lost it, but my confidence has diminished. and it becomes difficult and challenging. So for me, the big passion for us as a college is to stop that from happening, is to increase those opportunities, and it's to promote that skill development so that they can actually see that it's a huge value to their employability and their self-confidence. So that's a little bit about me.
Brilliant, that's a wonderful introduction. Already we've got two different journeys. We've got an external sort of analysis with Lucy, and we've got something more internal in terms of being in the college sector. But also thank you so much for sharing that vulnerability really of the confidence. And I think it's somewhere where people sit at this very time looking to re-engage with that confidence. And in the FE sector, the number of students who will be coming to us who are at crossroads of wanting to do things but not is very important. So diolch for sharing that. And if we can move now to Amy.
Hi, pnawn da. Na I trio gorau glas siarad Cymraeg, ond dwi'n dysgwr Cymraeg, so mae hyder fi fel rian dwi'n trio siarad Cymraeg gymaint â phosib. So ymddiheuriadau os di gramadeg fi ddim yn da iawn. Ond so fel dwi'n deud, Amy Thompson dwi'n bod yn gweithio i GLLM ers 2012 wan. Nes i dechreuais i weithio fel darlithydd a nes i cael swydd newydd fi, rheolwr maes rhaglen chwaraeon a gwasanaethau cyhoeddus mewn 2022. So fel rhian, dwi'n bod yn gweithio hefo'r adran ddwyieithwyr i trio datblygu Cymraeg yn y coleg a datblygu hyder y myfyrwyr i defnyddio Cymraeg nhw yn y dosbarth ag fel aseiniad hefyd.
Diolch, thank you very much, and coming across really well, Amy. So diolch. It's really good. And I can't detect anything, but you know, but I think it's doing really well. So thank you very much. Good to hear that note on confidence again in those bilingual settings. And by no means least, Rachel, if you could give an introduction to yourself, please.
I'm Rachel Dewey. So I'm the curriculum manager in Coleg Pen y Bont for construction. I cover FE and work-based learning. So quite like the rest of the panel, really, we're just trying to do our best to encourage students and staff alike to develop their Welsh language skills. Diolch.
Thank you very much, diolch. So thanks so much for introducing yourselves. And I think it's really nice to see people with different experiences, different backgrounds, at different stages in their own confidence in the journey. But also when we're looking at the subject areas being covered here, from work-based learning to health and care, public services, sport, and construction. I think it's just reinforcing this is a journey for all of us. I don't think there's anywhere in a college that can say, actually, you know what, this is something that we're not going to get involved in. It's the opposite, that actually the question needs to be, how are you in your roles, in your departments, going to be leading on this agenda to progress to 1 million speakers and improving the culture of Welsh language. So the first question really is around just the planning of Welsh or bilingual provision. I think there's a lot for us to learn from each other on this, and I'll start with Lucy and just work through as we had with the introduction. So give me a little bit of time here to prep, Lucy. So it's you're going first. But how do you go about planning for this? And I'm assuming if you could maybe bring out maybe some of the challenges and how you might try and respond to some of those challenges when planning for Welsh or bilingual provision. Thank you.
Diolch. I've got 5 points here that I just wanted to cover, Yusuf. And firstly, we commence our planning during admin week in August, where we have 4 days. And I would invite Sgiliaeth in and/or Coleg Cymraeg Canol to deliver training to the team. All the assessors are required to attend, and this training is a very effective way of reminding staff of the need to continue to develop Welsh medium bilingual provision. So my second point to move on to, as a college, we would also invite both Sgiliaeth and Coleg Cymraeg to our Aspire training days throughout the year. Following on to my third is the feedback from my own assessing team is obtained. This is invaluable and is always very positive and proactive. Also, during our monthly team meetings, we have Welsh as an agenda item. So we make sure we have involvement from all our assessors and internal quality assurers. And lastly, at the centre of our planning, we build our Welsh into our internal quality process as well. So that would lead me on then to your second question later on, is how do I implement that planning?
Brilliant. And can I just ask before we get into that, but I'll noted, and I'll come to you for that question, with the internal quality planning then, is that what does that look like? Can you just give us a little flavour on how, when you're reviewing the college, what does that Welsh lens look like?
Okay, so I have a team of internal quality assurers, and we would meet once a month, and this is timetabled throughout the year. We would then look at our quality assurance process, where we sample one learner twice throughout the year, and then we bring that into our internal quality assurance sample plan, so we can measure the distance travelled of a learner on their journey.
Brilliant. And you're also looking at the development then of Welsh language and Welsh skill in that process.
Absolutely, Yusuf. And if we identify any areas of action for improvement or recommendations, that's where we would come together and then feed back to the assessing team and to our Welsh language tutor as well.
I really like that focus on the case study individual and going to depth in that focus. So I think there's definitely something to look at there. And Rhian, if I can come over to you now.
Hi, yeah, very similar to what Lucy has said. Obviously, everything starts with a budget. So, what do I have available to me as a resource? And I work really closely with the bilingual development manager, Helen Humphreys, at the college, because obviously, Coleg Cymraeg wouldn't be, I can honestly say, I don't think I'd be as far advanced within the actual learning area if it wasn't for the help and support that we get from yourselves. So, part of our processes in the college is that each learning area would develop a bilingual action plan. So we would review our offer, how many staff have we got speaking Welsh, how many students have we got speaking Welsh who are fluent, what training needs are developed. So that sort of informs sort of the wider planning basis. Also, what we would do as well is, as part of the funding that you've provided, I've appointed bilingual champions to my learning area. So each curriculum area has a bilingual champion, because the reality is I could not do this by myself, because as an operational manager it's quite intense, so I don't have the time to do what I'd like to do in that sense. So the bilingual champions take a huge lead on that for me. So these bilingual champions are part of, like Lucy's, the learning area meetings that we have. There's a permanent agenda on bilingual champions updates. So that has instilled a lot of discussion around the learning area, a lot of competition. Oh, what do you mean? Her displays look nice. My displays are going to be bilingual now. A lot of discussion, a lot of sharing of courses that are available, hints and tips, applications that can be used. And that is captured then in a bilingual channel on our Teams page. So it's constantly monitored by the bilingual champions to update. The other thing we do as well, which informs planning, is that we have forums with students twice a year that encompasses everything from the application process to induction, but I also include the Welsh delivery, because every one of my groups in my learning area has an hour a week Welsh in context sessions with teachers. So I always want to know, well, what are they enjoying, what would they like to see more of, like for example, this forum, level 1s and level 2s think is absolutely fantastic and they don't want to change anything. Level 3s want a little bit more challenge around conversational Welsh, so that we can react very quickly to that. So lots of things inform our planning, especially around identifying early on in the year how many fluent Welsh speakers we've got, how many Welsh speakers that aren't fluent, but they can speak a little bit of Welsh, so that we can basically capture what support they would need. So the bilingual champions would meet up with all of those Welsh speakers, non-Welsh speakers, to capture, well, what would they like to develop with regard to their Welsh language skills, and also to identify, because we've got a number of students that come from Welsh medium schools that might need to do their essential skills, for example, and we work with the wrth to deliver essential skills. So I suppose it's that constant analysis and review of the previous year really informs the planning for the year going ahead. Hope that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense, and there's a lot to unpack here. So it's really good to hear about the champions, to hear about the forums, and also what I'm really taking from that is the personalized approach based on level. I think that's very interesting in terms of looking at what level people are coming in at and having a slightly different offer for them as well as what it seems some really good strength in you've got sessions that are planned for everyone as well, so yeah. The offer is there, so raising the expectation of what you're asking people to do, and that question of optional versus we're in Wales and we're learning Welsh as well. Then interesting, good to see that too.
I think as well, from a teaching planning perspective, and I'm sure all colleges and settings do this, but there is a contextual statement that's attached to schemes of work that lecturers would need to update. So it gives you a bit of a context of what's happening in the classroom, ALN support, for example, identifying those learners. But we also insist that they identify the Welsh learners. So, and their schemes of work should also show opportunity to develop their Welsh, because I know this is a question a bit further on, because one of the big challenges is I don't want to do it through the medium of Welsh. So it's taking that away from them to a certain extent. So every member of staff has to provide that opportunity if they've got Welsh speakers or non-Welsh speakers in the class.
No, thank you very much, and it's important to recognise that. And I think what I also to take a very slight pause for the audience, I guess, because the question is also, I hope we're thinking all together, how are we planning our Welsh provision? How are we planning our curriculum? What are the expectations that we're setting? What events are we putting on? All this comes under planning, and we're hearing already some great examples from that. Amy, can I come over to you now to share your planning for Welsh or bilingual provision?
Ia, y beth gyntaf da ni'n neud ydy cyn y blwyddyn newydd yn mis Medi, da ni'n adnabod dysgwyr Cymraeg o'r ffurflen gais, a da ni'n defnyddio'r hwylyswydd Cymraeg. Da ni'n bod yn lwcus, da ni wedi cael 2 hwylyswydd Cymraeg yn yr adran ni, so da ni'n defnyddio'r hwylyswydd Cymraeg yn strategol i'w cefnogi yn y dosbarth, yn enwedig os nad ydy'r darlithydd yn ddwyieithog. So dyna beth gyntaf da ni'n neud, i weld faint o myfyrwyr sy'n Cymraeg neu di-Cymraeg, a da ni'n trio rhoi y hylyswydd Cymraeg lle mae'r where the need is. Wedyn, beth dwi'n trio neud o'r information hwnna ydy, dwi'n trio amserlennu y cyrsiau gyda'i modelau cyffredinol ar yr un pryd, a wedyn rhannu'r siaradwyr Cymraeg a di-Cymraeg, fel wedyn mae rhai modelau yn gallu bod yn B1 neu C1, so maen nhw'n wneud y gyd o'r dysgu trwy Cymraeg. Da ni'n cael cyfarfodydd, mae'r rhaglen i gytuno y minimum standards, key expectations, da ni'n disgwyl yn yr dosbarthau. Mae'r staff yn rhoi requests i fewn, be maen nhw angen, os dyn nhw angen help hefo myfyrwyr, os di myfyrwyr yn angen one-to-one, so da ni'n planio hwnna i fewn i'r blwyddyn. Fel rhian, da ni'n gweithio hefo'r wrth ac yr adran skills hefyd i roi'r opsiynau i'r myfyrwyr i wneud y GCSE resit neu essential skills yn Cymraeg hefyd, so da ni'n trio cael nhw i wneud hynna. So dyna beth da ni'n neud really cyn y blwyddyn newydd academaidd.
That's a brilliant take on it, Amy, and I love the phrase promoters, Welsh promoters. I think that's a very positive phrase, as are Welsh champions. But I really like the focus on using data to capture, prior to starting the level of Welsh, and that positive conversation that you can have with them about what that year might look like for them to progress in Welsh. And also the other point I'm taking from that is the early differentiation of current skill where they are, to then maybe tailor that too. So I think that's really interesting to look at using the capture form from your application to start to target that. Thank you very much. And Rachel, come to you next to look at the planning.
Yeah, so thanks. So just mindful not to say pretty much everything that's already been said. So we do the audit initially of staff and students, find out, you know, where everybody is. We acknowledge that, and we set realistic goals as a sort of consequence of that, just trying to encourage that bit more Welsh speaking as a result. We set goals in the quality improvement plan in line with the national policies, to ensure that actually it's all well and good setting these targets, but actually we need to follow up on them, and we need to make sure they've been hit, and that's our measure then at the end of the year. Okay, how many Welsh speakers do we have? Did they improve their sort of language goals? Did the staff? We have student and staff surveys as well that help indicate sort of where they're feeling on that. We've this year done actually quite a good curriculum integration with the Welsh language department and our Welsh language officers. So every Thursday, the Welsh language officers will come into our team meeting and do like sort of a 15-minute session, because we think that that's actually quite realistic. That'll help the team. It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel unnatural. It's not extra on top of, you know, X, Y, Z. It's actually really natural, and there's a really good relationship and development coming of that. We've also started to have sessions, Welsh sessions within tutorials with our group. So they have an hour a week of tutorial. Half of that session is dedicated to Welsh, so the students are able to develop, depending on sort of, it could be if they're Welsh language speakers, or, you know, they've never spoken a word of Welsh before. It's a way of engaging them, advancing their language skills, and sort of making it quite fun as well. The tasks around that are quite useful and helpful to them. We also have obviously staff development. There's lots of bits and pieces in there, like the training opportunities for staff. They've got further support with Mary Richards from Coleg Gymraeg. She's really fun. She's really engaged our staff team in PLD Day, which was actually the turning point for us, to be fair. She was brilliant and got them all on board. I got Marion with me now, who's done a lot of hard work in our Welsh department. She's really sort of listened to the team, listened to the students, what it is we actually want, because we're all behind this, but we really want to make it meaningful and something that we actually can sustain, which is really helpful. Like, I can't speak highly enough of the team, to be honest with you. And bilingual resources and materials as well. So Marion's teams work really well with my department to actually share resources and, you know, ensure that they're bilingual, they're meeting all the requirements and actually helpful again. So that's really, like, you know, the qualities there. So yeah, that's pretty much what we do for planning.
Diolch, and croeso Marion. It's great. It's you know, brought a friend with you, which is great, Rachel. So and I think what I have taken from that is some really specific things, I guess. I really like the idea of the 15-minute sessions every week, because, you know, it's small. You can commit to 15 minutes, but then I'm assuming we'll come to implementation in a bit, but that makes it more achievable and therefore more accountable. I also very interested in the 30 minutes in the division of the tutorial as well. I think that's got a real interesting look at that, as well as, of course, your sort of your what seems to be quite a forensic look at data underpinning some of these decisions. So what I'm going to probably do then is in reverse order now is try to cover a couple of things. Is Lucy had to prepare quickly first. Now, Rachel, you have to prepare quickly next, and it's the fairest way to do it. But a couple of things really. So how do you implement? Just a bit on how you implement, but also could you, in that answer, talk about maybe some of the response that staff had from staff in that implementation? So you've planned it, you've put it through, and if you're happy to, maybe share where it's gone well, and if you've got an example of where you might learn and want to do something differently that you might want to share with us, that's great as well. But I'd be quite interested in the implementation and the response to that. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So it's like incremental change. We've done it slowly. It's not like we're expecting you to be, you have to do this and it's now and let's go. We just want to do better for the moment. So Marian's team, the first meeting we had, she came in and her team came in and they had a cup of tea in the staff room with the team, had a bit of a chat, how can we help you develop and get to the place where we really need to be getting to? What are your starting points? What are you confident with? What can we, do to develop that confidence? After that, they moved on to a classroom and started doing real work around basically where they are, and it was really, really gradual, very small steps, nothing too challenging, because obviously we have some students, some staff, who are English speaking. You've got some staff that have a little bit of Welsh, and it's finding the middle ground there. You don't want to frighten anyone off, and just becoming comfortable and more confident. So we're looking at that at the moment. The students in their tutorials, again, at first they hear they got to do Welsh. There's a couple of questions, in construction, why do I have to do Welsh? We have similar questions with skills as well. But it's about Marian and her team actually showing them, actually, this is why, and it's more employable. You've got more employability skills. It's actually, it can be quite fun. It doesn't have to be boring, full hour lecturing sort of scenario. They can break it up with games and bits and pieces. I've spoken to the our progression coach who leads the tutorial, and she's very complimentary about it. She speaks for the students, and she's been nothing but complimentary. Marian's team, again, they've got a good dynamic with the students, and they actually enjoy going. When you ask them, you never would thought it initially, but actually they enjoy those sessions. It breaks up tutorial. They know it's only half an hour. It's quite the way they've done it, I think, is very different to when I was in school and you had to stand there. It's a completely different approach, and I think that's the key.
Great. I think that's a really good sort of a good bit of detail on the implementation. I like the incremental from coffee to a classroom approach, and I think that's and the low access point as well. And would you say, just before I move on to Amy, would you say that has been from your construction team, that has then been very well received by all of them?
The way it's been done, it's the team are on board because it's support. It's not, oh, there you go, you've got to do this now, and then they're looking around thinking, how the heck am I going to do that? It's actually, we're with you. We're starting off small. If you want us there, we can come to some of your sessions actually and help you there. And whether it's workshop, theory sessions, they're really all in, and I think that's the difference here. They've got, they've brought in technology and downloading apps that can support. There's lots of stuff going on that's really easing the journey.
That's brilliant, and you used a phrase here which I'm going to use slightly more provocatively here for ourselves. How can we get to a point where our teams are all in? You just said they're all in. How can we get to a point where they're all in? And the final comment I'll make on that as well is really important, I think, to track the coffee and the classroom, and because these still count as events, there's still data, this is still meaningful activity. So we want to get the balance right of having data, but it's the right data telling the story that we think is authentic, as opposed to we managed to get 85% of our learners to undertake a module in Welsh language.
That's what we want to do. We want to make it sustainable as well, and that's the key.
Absolutely.
It's not just to tick a box. Actually, we want this, and we want to support it fully, so that the targets are hit, and we can just move on from that.
Absolutely, process driven.
Can I just add something there? And just in terms of implementation, this week I've seen, in terms of distance travelled, this week I've come to the construction building and I've said, bore da, prynhawn da, sut wyt ti? I would never have had a response in Welsh, and the construction staff are now responding. That confidence is starting to develop, and we are seeing it. It absolutely made my day yesterday, and they're excited about it because there was a parents' evening held last Wednesday, and one of the construction staff asked me to come and have a look at their presentation that they were presenting to parents and learners. And it was all ddwyieithog, it was all bilingual, and they were proud to show us as the Welsh team. So I think that speaks volumes.
It does, and that's exactly what you want, isn't it? You want that buy-in. You want people to be proud to show you their progress, as opposed to being in fear that they're going to be told they haven't done something. And so I think this is, great examples then, great examples of how the staff have responded. Amy, what have you got for this implementation of planning, and also a bit of insight into the staff response to that implementation?
Na I ateb hwn yn Saesneg os di hwnna'n iawn. So very similar. I think one of our biggest barriers initially is that we only had 5 lecturers that were Welsh speaking, and that were able to deliver, write and mark in Welsh. So historically it fell on them as like a form of goodwill, and that was like 5 out of maybe 30 staff members that I have in the department. So since we've had these Welsh language facilitators, I can't talk about them or praise them enough. I think they've managed to change the mindset of the staff, and it was making the staff aware this is not any more extra work for you guys. This is what the Welsh language facilitators are for. So then the Welsh language facilitators, like I mentioned previously, how we strategically deployed them into the classroom and with one-to-ones and with certain staff. They then went into the classroom and they did the translation, the cyfieithu. They did the encouraging the learners to submit the work in Welsh. They would then so if the lecturer was Welsh, English speaking, they would place the Welsh learners in a group together. Then the Welsh language facilitator would go over and work with them. So grouping them in Welsh. We also try and do it in an informal way, in a social way. So we have very similar to, how you guys were talking about coffees and, chats, because we're obviously the sports and public services department, we would do it through extracurricular activities at lunchtime. So we've got a club chwaraeon Gymraeg that run 12 till 1 when the learners are on break, then our Welsh language facilitators will go in and they will use Welsh in an informal, social but fun setting. So then we have learners that aren't Welsh speaking showing up, and they're using Welsh more than they ever have before, and it's accepted more now. And that's something that we wanted to do as a department, is change the mindset of some learners, that it's a safe place to be proud of your Welsh heritage and your Welsh culture. So that's something that we are really big on promoting as well. Like, I'm backed on to the academy gym where they blast music from 2:30 every day. Now I've got Welsh music blasting. I've never heard that before in the 12 years that I've been here. Another thing that we do to implement Welsh into the area is, like I said earlier, we work closely with the Wrth. So the Wrth will pay for our learners to do their referee course or their C licence, or for example in football, rugby, netball, and then our learners will then referee tournaments, but they will use their Welsh to referee. So we try and implement it formally in the classroom with the Welsh language facilitators, but we also try and do it in an informal social setting. And then another thing that our Welsh language facilitators do to get the staff on board is they have one-to-one meetings with them. Our staff, I think we've got 7 staff that are on the Learning Welsh scheme. We've had 2 staff last year that won a Welsh language award here as in the group, and then this year, I've nominated another 2 staff for a Welsh champion because they are really trying to develop and promote Welsh. And we have seen, I'd say, from last year, we have seen that change in mindset where we have that growth mindset behind Welsh in the area, and learners are starting to know now and understand and value the importance of Welsh, especially the public services learners that potentially want to stay local and work for North Wales Police and North Wales Fire. So they're really on board with it now. And yeah, it's just been really nice to see. So we haven't really had any, touch wood, we haven't really had any barriers at the minute. I guess it's if we had 10 Welsh language facilitators, that would be amazing, you know. So it's trying to deploy them where staff feel like they're getting a fair slice of the pie, if you like. And you know, it'll be an evolving thing every year, depending on how many Welsh learners we have in certain groups.
Diolch. And also, Cloiser and Harald, I've got something. Just want to bring a question here directly to this, which is: have you noticed a difference in the written responses now of the learners in their Welsh submissions because of the facilitation? Yeah, definitely. We've been doing learning walks last term, and they're coming up next term, and I've really seen a development in the number of students that are submitting summative work in Welsh. They would do it formatively, like little tasks in the classroom, and they'd have that conversation with the tutor or the Welsh language facilitator. But now, through the Welsh language facilitators, they've given them the confidence and the encouragement to submit summative work in Welsh. Regardless if the tutor is English or if their friends are English, you know. So yeah, and that's been a big breakthrough for us this year, is that we're seeing that increase in summative assignments in Welsh. Thank you very much, and really appreciate the response there, and also the detail on some of that resources, which we'll touch upon as a open discussion in a moment. Rhian, over to you. What have you seen in terms of implementation? What do you do rather in terms of implementation? And what have you seen in terms of the response from staff to that?
All of our groups get an hour of Welsh in context sessions. So as we mentioned around the other idea around the tutorial, so these are more specific, bespoke sessions. So like, and you know, this has been running since 2009, where students would come in, often say, there's no way I'm doing Welsh, and have quite a real negative attitude towards it, to us putting on bespoke sessions which really target what it is that they need to learn. So for example, childcare, what does a child need to know up until the age of 8? Do you know that? And how can you implement that? It then branched into health and social care. So we've got more, you know, how you're feeling, parts of the body, choices, it's conversational Welsh. We've branched into our access to HE provision now, which is more around employability really, and going to HE and the importance of keeping and maintaining and developing that skill. So there's specific lecturers that deliver that. Over the course of the years that we've been delivering, I've been trying to increase our number of Welsh speakers that we've got in the area, and I think we've got around 6 Welsh speakers within the area, and 4 of them have been selected as bilingual champions. One of them, Rhian Evans, received last year's Professional Teaching Award. So she had the Learners Award for Best Teacher and Lecturer, and one of them was because of her engagement with the Welsh language and the support that she provides those students. I suppose with regard to implementation as well, it's also already been touched on, the importance of those learning walks and checking that the quality and the standard is there, and that rich feedback from student forums regarding what it is that they're enjoying, what it is that we could improve. Those are really important things moving forward. Staff, in fairness, have positively, because I've immersed staff in this since I've been LAM, so it's a continued agenda point. Bilingual champions will feed back. Bilingual champions are there to support them around whether they need translation, whether they need advice or guidance. They'll sit with individual Welsh speaking students stretch them, they'll capture ideas around the non-Welsh speaking students what they would like to learn, so we can build that into our implementation. And what's really impressed me is, and I suppose this is an example, a lot of the funding is associated to vocational courses, not A-level. But because I immerse the learning area and take them with me, our A-level last year, we had a student that completed an AS and A2 through the medium of Welsh, had an A star, and neither lecturer spoke Welsh. So it just proves really that even though the funding might not be there for A-level, the principles and what we're trying to develop as a learning area really sort of branches out to all staff. Staff as well are targeted within their appraisals around Welsh, and it can be different for depending on which member of staff it is. Like initially, way back when, it was, you know, use incidental Welsh in the classroom, that was a basis, to progressing then to, right, okay, one of your units or one of your modules now, you need to create bilingual PowerPoint resources for the students, to then full qualifications being delivered bilingually through the medium of Welsh. So, you know, it depends on that sort of where that member of staff is, but you know, the implementation for me is utilising all the support that I can provide. Like we have the Welsh Bilingual Development Manager, which is Helen Humphreys, and her team are instrumental in keeping that Welsh agenda moving, and to make the likes of myself accountable, because it's not just the Welsh language within our roles. It's one element of a large role, but equally so, it's a crucial element, and we need that support from yourselves, and we need that support from our college Welsh development team really to be able to take it forward. So I hope that helps.
It does very much, Ariane, and what you're talking about there, you know, building on really nicely from Amy's comments is the natural opportunities for this to take place within health and care, and again the robustness of the learning walks to monitor that. But I also think very interesting, you know, for us to look at this at a later date, but this almost case study of this A-level learner without the funding, but the appetite and the ambition. If you wouldn't mind just thinking about what the ingredients were for success on that, and maybe getting back to us, and I'm sure the colleague, we'd be very interested to see how that was so successful, maybe what we could learn more widely from that. I think that would be, you know, I want to meet them for starters, but you know, I think it's really interesting. And Lucy, could you finish this section off for us in terms of anything else in terms of implementation that you think is specific to Pembrokeshire, and how the staff have responded to that?
I think I can really mirror what everyone else has said, Yusuf, but really it's how the staff have responded. The assessors embrace the opportunity to build on their skills to support their learners. They find there is nothing more rewarding than being able to nominate learners for awards. The team get a real buzz about nominating learners for example, our BWobble Consortium Welsh Language Award, our BWobble Consortium Inspirational Use of Welsh Language, the Coleg Cymraeg Canol 2024 Awards for the new talent, and also the Apprenticeship Ambassador as part of Coleg Cymraeg Canol Ambassador Scheme. They get a real buzz of being able to nominate, as well as, I've got to give a shout out here, the Chair's Award for our Welsh Language Tutor.
That's brilliant, and I love the focus on the externality there as well, because you're giving some prestige, but you're taking the pressure off yourself internally as being the only place where you're going to drive this. We're actually, in a useful way, looking at who can help in that accountability in a positive way, that accountability piece by, you know, what awards are we going for and how are we going to move that forward. So what I'm going to do now for this last bit before we come out to questions, and if people have questions, they would like to put them in the chat, because I guess it's like a genuine question for all of us here. But so this is going to be a hands up part of this, I guess, where we are in this final piece. So you've spoken about the support and resources you get from the colleague, Diolch, and it seems like that's being used really well, and also the support that you get from Sgiliau, from the Wrth as well. Combining these two questions together, what are the challenges, and if there was a resource, but in the context of this, it's a tough climate out there, so it's a realistic resource. I think it's important that people have like something that might be real. What resource would there be to respond to that challenge? So what are the challenges that are currently here in your settings? And is there a resource that you think could be useful that we need to maybe consider? And I'm also putting that out to the audience. If anyone's got anything they'd like to contribute on the chat, we could potentially read those out as well. So any hands up first on that? I'm being brave and saying who wants to tackle that first in terms of the challenges that are currently there in your settings, and with all the great work that you're doing, but also if there's any resource that you think could be used to support with that. Who would like to take that first? Rhian, I've seen you've gone off mic, so I'm going for you. That's an indication of movement for me.
Well, you know, there are always challenges. I think one of the biggest challenges is that when you do get Welsh speakers coming from schools, and when asked would they like to complete part of their qualification or the full qualification in Welsh, the answer is always no. And it takes an awful lot of time and cajoling to be able to get them to maintain that skill, a bit like I said, really, because they're going to lose their confidence. Students are engaged through technology, and you know, maybe opportunity around more immersive experiences where they can practice the language through like a role play, but it's not necessarily in a classroom, but it's sort of that I'm not tech. I don't know very much about technology, but I have seen sort of that immersive AI VR experience around students being able to use it for interviewing, for example, if they go to university, or general interviews for employment. So I think more engaging sort of digital activities, I think would really engage the learners, considering trying to get off their phone is a nightmare. So something that they can really interact with would be useful for me.
Great, and I think the resource you're talking about there, and I think it's a common problem. I've certainly experienced that. What if they say no? It sort of links me to the prompters part of that, or the sort of the pre-work you do before onboarding. If there was a way we could invest in some resources where people could see the use of those resources as being quite an easy function to access, I think there could be something for us to work with there. And thanks for sharing that. I think it's a real challenge for us all in terms of those who say no. And I think it's a bit of a deep challenge that as well. So I think thank you for sharing that. So anyone else who's got something either similar or would like to build upon what Rhian has said there?
Yeah, I'd like to build on something that Rhian said in relation to reluctant learners who are coming to the college, you know, fluent Welsh speakers. They've got this fantastic skill, which if they don't use it, they lose it. And speaking from someone who's had that experience, quite difficult coming back and developing your Welsh language skills. When they go to university, they get a bursary for completing, obviously, modules through the medium of Welsh. There's no incentive like that in FE. And so what tends to happen is in FE, they don't use their Welsh language. Perhaps orally they do, but they choose not to produce anything written. And so that can have a detrimental impact on them then applying for the bursary in university, because they haven't got the confidence, because they've been out of using their Welsh language skills for the last year or potentially the last 2 years. Again, I know money might be an issue. But again, how do you incentivize learners?
You're absolutely right. And I think that is definitely a question that in the colleague as well that we look to address and support the voice on that, in terms of that being important, that we're investing in this agenda, and we're investing in the resource that's there. And I think it's a really good point around why would someone try and engage in a bursary later on if that isn't offered earlier on where it potentially could have been. I think there's an issue of scale, I guess, as well across the sector in terms of the numbers that they'll be looking at. But certainly, I think there's something we could look at to see, are there any ways in which bursaries could be used as an incentive. Is there a final comment anyone would like to make before we sort of start to round these up, or if Lucy and Amy have any brief comments they'd like to add on to those? Okay, so I'm just going to now check in the chat to see if we've got any. Have we had anything come through, from any questions from people in the chat?
Yes, I can just see one question that's popped up now. How do you encourage the staff who are confident in using their Welsh language in the classroom to support the less confident staff? That's a great question. So how do you use your confident staff to support your less confident staff? So who would like to take that one?
I'm happy to take it. The bilingual champion roles that we've got in the college, one of their remit is to support staff in the classroom. That could either be going in and observing 10 minutes of the classroom just to give them some ideas, or it could be helping them with translation, or it could be giving them guidance. There's also there is a course I went on several years ago that we have as well, which was with Bangor University around using creating bilingual lessons. So that was, some of our staff have been on that, but really it's using also the likes of our Welsh bilingual development team to actually as well come in to speak to the staff and to gain some reassurance and good feedback through observations, really, that when we do the observations or the learning walks.
So it seems to me that this is all around confidence building. In terms of the measures that you're putting in place. And what I'm also detecting from what everyone has said is trying to make sure that you're also removing a bit of that fear factor, and we've got to balance this delicately, because we need to have the expectation that we're going to be on a journey to learn Welsh and improve where we are, but at the same time, it's how you bring the staff on board with you, and how they come back to that phrase, they're all in it because they understand why. Also, there'll be, if there are any people saying they're not in it, then but they can see that the direction of travel and the tide is, no, this is us, this is our culture, we're moving that direction. And I think that cultural piece is really, really important. And certainly as someone who moved to Wales, I was in a position where getting a job from and coming to Wales, my first thought was, I need to learn Welsh. And then I arrived in Cardiff and thought, oh no, I don't. So that was which is awful. Like, it's not a, I think it should be building upon, the culture should be set. And I think that was a good 10 years ago. And so I think the culture is changing on that. But I think we need to build upon people like myself who have an assumption that if you're moving to a country, I find it's a requirement for me to try and learn the language. And I think there are people, and equally for people who've learned the language and have a fear of losing it or worry about losing it. There's a sort of an identity thing around that. I think it's really important that we engage with that and we build upon that. So it's been great to hear the conversations around this. And all I'm going to try to do now is just summarize some of the things I think that we've had as the takeaways. And so, in terms of the planning, it seems to me that the pre-planning before they arrive is an area of focus for us to look at. What are we doing before they step foot in the college, and what messages are we sending out to our feeder schools in terms of where we stand on our Welsh strategy and on how we're looking to improve people? What communication are we giving to them in our open evenings and our events, the touch points that we have with the experience days that we hold with our feeder schools? Is our Welsh identity, is our commitment to Welsh language coming through in those? And then my second sort of point on this is around the personalization of data in when someone then arrives to an open evening or to an event, do they feel as if we have understood where they are in their Welsh journey, whether they're someone who's just coming to the language for the first time, or there's someone who is fluent or in somewhere in the middle? And are we personalizing that those first early conversations with them, so they feel like there is a plan for them to take them forward. And I think that's really, really interesting in terms of us considering to what extent we're doing that. And then the third thing then is this incremental approach of in departments and with staff, how you're moving from that coffee to a classroom setting, and how we're then onboarding staff with that too. So I think we've got some nice, and then of course the measurement of that in terms of authentic data sets. So we'll also be looking at funding down the line as well. Obviously, this is a challenging climate at the moment, but I hope that's given a useful summary of the conversation that we've had so far. And I'd just like to thank our panelists. I'd like to thank Lucy, Amy, Rhian, and Rachel for their contribution, and Marion as well, in here as well. Thank you very much, Diolch and Val, for attending. And I'd also like to thank Haf and Dairy for supporting this in the background. And we're about to finish on time, so Diolch and Val, and I look forward to seeing you all soon in this context. Diolch. Thank you very much.